Let me answer the first question first. If Russia invades, that means tanks or troops crossing the border of Ukraine again. Then there will be no longer a Nord Stream 2. We will bring an end to it.
How will you do that exactly, since the project and control of the project is within Germany's control?
We will, I promise you, we'll be able to do it.
Hey there, welcome to the channel. So you heard the opening clip there. It's very interesting that we have a situation where, we have leaders that will say things and they might say sort of maybe surprising things. And then when that thing happens, all of a sudden there's like total denial that person could have done it. So we have a situation here. We saw, Biden saying, hey, we would take out Nord Stream 2 if what happened with Russia going into Ukraine. And now the Nord Stream 1 and 2 were sabotaged. Why would it be any other way but exactly what he said? So one of the things I wanted to kind of look at here is kind of like a little more detail on what's going on here. And this is kind of interesting. So if we look here, made a little flow chart. Okay, Nord Stream sabotage. Here we go. Who did it? Well, anyone else did it? Sure, it could be. This is speculation, but there's just no way to go ahead and blow up that pipe, the kind of the concrete lining, the whole thing. This is a Biden job, no doubt. So, there's a little speculation here, but that's the direction we're going to go down in. Now, here's the interesting question I have over here is that did he tell the EU or did he not tell the EU? This is a very interesting question to me because if it seems almost possible that if he did not tell Germany and did not tell the EU, what are the consequences for Western relations? It's very interesting that everyone's kind of like jumping on the bandwagon in terms of the leaders are all trying to say, hey, Russia did it, Russia did it. Now, it would be really interesting if it turned out that Biden didn't really consult with them before he did this. Now, it's possible, speculation, but hey, what if that was the case? I mean, think about it. That would be a pretty bad position. If you're Germany and you're like, spent all this money, worked with Russia, put these pipelines in, and now we're coming into the winter, we're concerned, and now you blew up the pipelines. I don't know. Hence the title. Should Germany declare war on the US? Maybe. If I was them, I would be considering it seriously. Now, the other thing going on here, let's assume that he did. Now, let's say if he consulted with them, why did they let him proceed? Now, this is, a tougher one here because the question really is, is exactly, I assume that basically, Biden is able to bully them and push them around and kind of get him to do what he wants to do. I'm sure he had to make a bunch of promises like, hey, we're working to get you all the LNG you can get, open up whatever other pipelines, et cetera, et cetera. But now, however this happened, there's certain really consequences for Germany and EU. And the big thing is that they're in a perilous energy position this winter. So there's a couple things. First of all, you have a potential humanitarian crisis. It really comes down to, are they going to have enough natural gas to like heat people's homes? Are we going to be in a situation where you're going to have people freezing to death? It sounds crazy, but it's distinctly possible. That's a lot of gas that is not available anymore. A more likely and definitely baked into the cake kind of situation here for sure is number two. Will the economy go into a deep recession or depression? This is baked in because look, we already have reports of businesses shutting down, cutting back production because they're short on energy. And these businesses are going to get a lot of pressure from the government. If it's going to be like, hey, we need natural gas for heating homes or running a car factory, the car factory is getting shut down. However, the consequence is that, these companies can't just shut down production. They can't shut these things down without doing layoffs. They can't keep it going for very long. So that is another thing. And this one is already happening. So I think this one's already baked into the cake. But there's a consequence of that now, too, because the reality is number three here, will high inflation persist? The answer is yes. We are baking in high inflation. You're taking their natural gas supplies, which are coming from Russia, very cheap via pipeline. You're trying to. I mean, there's more pipelines, but you're trying to replace a big chunk of it with LNG. LNG is much more expensive. You got to basically, turn it into a liquid by compressing it, cooling it, get it in these big ships and ship it. It's a very expensive proposition. So what that means is you're baking in high inflation. You have both things in effect here. You have a more expensive natural gas, which is the base input to a lot of industry. And at the same time, that price is going up, but also, even if you get through this thing, you're going to be left with much higher inflation because you have your gas is costing much more than it did previously under the regime of Russian natural gas. Now, either way, this is really set up for kind of troubling things here. In reality, this in Germany, the reports are that they are preparing for civil unrest because this is exactly what's going to happen. You're going to have people that are laid off from their jobs, so they're going to be struggling financially. They're also going to be struggling to pay the high energy prices because the price of energy is going to be more expensive, both due to shortage and both due to the base cost of getting LNG there, et cetera. And at the same time, they're losing their jobs. All this stuff is going on. So this is very likely going to lead to civil unrest. Now, in response to the unrest, before this incident occurred, what would EU or Germany do? Basically, if they were getting into the core of the winter here, and it was really getting to be a problem, they always could go back and say, hey, you know what? We'll lift the sanctions, cut us a deal. And Russia could go and say, sure, why not? And turn the pipes on, turn it on somewhat, But now you have this huge problem. What happened here is that because of the sabotage, you can't do that anymore. There's no option. This option has been taken away. Hence, that's why this really looks like a situation. This really looks like a situation where something that the U.S. would do. And the reason is because Biden had made it very clear he doesn't like this pipeline. I mean, Trump had pointed out, the danger of it because you basically outsourced your energy supply to get it from Russia, right? And so it's sort of this. It's a variety of things, but it's sort of this fake environmentalism. It's like, oh, we're not going to actually do green energy, but we're not going to be the guilty ones. We're not going to drill the oil wells. We're not going to drill the natural gas wells. We'll just let Russia do it. And then that way we look like we're the good guys and we're cleaning up our act, when in reality, you haven't changed anything at all. You just changed where you got it, and you got it from a place that now you're upset with because of the actions they took in Ukraine. So that's kind of where we stand with this thing. I think it looks very, very bad. And given the other situations that are going on right now, so a couple other things let's think about here. We have a very strong dollar right now. And the consequence of this strong dollar is that this is putting a lot of pressure. And we could go look at the chart, but I'm not going to, because it's just like, look, our dollar is this going up. And then you see, as a result of that, you see other currencies, like all of them, really, euro, yen, everything is just going through the floor. And the consequence of that is that this is putting more stress on all these systems. Now, going back to Europe, well, Europe that is trying to buy LNG from the US, they need dollars. So now you're baking in a situation where it's more expensive. It's probably even a little bit more risky supply, given that, you have to get all these ships across the ocean safely. And you're baking in that high cost. And then at the same time, the value of the dollar is going up because we have a financial crisis brewing here. What's happening is you have all this dollar denominated debt, milkshake theory, all that stuff going on. So that on top of it is going to make it much harder for the EU to get their hands on this natural gas. So it's a really big problem. And the stuff with the pound is pretty shocking. The pound is just imploded. And, that's really not good for that country. And what's really interesting, because what's going on is some of these countries are not really responding in the correct way. So you have like the pound, they basically, in Great Britain, UK, they're kind of like doing some weird things where they're trying to do some stimulative actions, policy actions. And of course, this is really bad because anymore, basically, another reason the dollar is going up so much is because the Fed is hiking interest rates, and the Fed is very hawkish. So the Fed's out there and they're hiking interest rates, and what that does is that basically ends up increasing the value of your currency, and it makes it stronger relative to other currencies. So, for example, if you're looking at our 10-year, and our 10 years at whatever, 4 or 5%, compared to some other country um, who's doing the other thing, cutting rates, where you're going to earn less return. So it's just another flow directing money into the US. So that is adding to the stress of this at all. Now, with respect to the natural gas here, it was kind of interesting that today I looked at the chart, and what you see is you have the yearly chart, and we're right in that point of time where your storage. So this is your storage. We're right at that time of the year where the storage starts to, would be your storage level. And this, for example, would be your capacity. And you see, as you get into the winter months, you're basically in the summer and everything, you're pouring in natural gas into storage. And the idea is that you have more demand for natural gas during this period of time, right? During this period of time, you have more demand for natural gas than you have supply, and hence you pull it from storage. During this period of time, you have less demand than supply, and hence you put it into storage. Okay. And this is your storage. And this is basically the year. So this would be probably something like, this would be October or something like that. And so the consequence of that, here's your October, and this your October the next year, right? And so the consequence of this is that Europe is up here. They're doing pretty good in terms of they've got their storage, but there's two factors involved. A normal year, what will happen is they're still getting that supply, right? So even this period of time where they're drawing down their storage, they're still getting the supply. So remember, over here, when they're during this time in the summer and going into the fall, where they're putting gas into storage, during that time, there's still flows of gas coming in, and basically the flows of gas coming in are exceeding the amount being consumed. So you're putting that into storage. Over here, as you come into the winter months, your demand outstrips your supply. But the key problem that we have right now is that this was with Nord Stream 1 running, okay? And this now, Nord Stream 1, has just been totally shut down. So the problem is that when you're at this graph, and this number looks good right now, it looks good, like they are at the typical 5-year area of where they have this storage. They're a little above, and they're actually just starting to draw down. I noticed that it was starting to change. The problem is, because you've cut off this supply, instead of this nice normal slow curve down as you go through the winter, this could, and this is what we're going to have to watch out for, and this is going to be the key. This is going to be the key thing to see if this happens, how fast this draws down. Because you start seeing this thing going off a cliff, if that starts happening and you start emptying out the storage much quicker, then that's going to be a sign that the government in Europe, the governments are going to have to act very fast to cut that demand back. And that's where you're going to see them to shut down whatever factories are left open. They're going to do all kinds of nasty stuff because they're going to run out of gas. So let's go ahead, just look at those charts really quick. Yeah, so over here is this website, Celsius Energy, and they have the current natural gas and it's European natural gas inventory. So like I was saying, that, here's where we are right now. Green line is the 5-year average. Blue is current storage. So it's hard to say, but we're a little above there. So we're doing pretty good. However, note that the 5-year average. So if you look over here, they're looking for this day, on this day, September 29th, the 5-year average is that you put in 7.3 BCF. So they're still putting gas into storage. But what happened is, this is the first time I've noticed it. Now, it could be a one-day thing, or we could be hitting the turning point. But the point is, they're putting in less gas than they normally do. They're putting in 1.4 BCF less gas in on this day. Now, this could just be a daily hiccup, could be something like that. But this is one thing that you can watch, because you'll start seeing that If you start getting to a point where normally the 5-year average is injections, positive numbers, but yet you're starting to pull storage out ahead of time, then that means this curve is coming down and they're using it up faster than they expect. And when that happens, they're going to have to act really fast. So this is one site that you can go to and check it out. So I think to kind of conclude here, there is a real deep consequence to this, and it's something that almost really hard to appreciate. We've had this issue with the West. We've done a lot to supply weapons to Ukraine in this whole invasion thing. But one of the problems is it appears like what happened, the Fiona Hill article about what happened in April is that like the West has been moving to prevent any kind of agreement on shutting this war down. And this is a very, I would say, a sadistic thing. It's like, we're giving you all kinds of money and weapons, but we're not doing the dying. And the Ukrainians are doing the dying, right? And this has been going on since April. It could have been shut down in April. Now it looks like we've blown up the pipelines. So now all those problems I'm talking about, civil unrest, people possibly, starving, freezing to death, industry shutting down, a depression because there's just not enough energy in Europe, all that. Now, I'm sure that the leaders, particularly in the US, think that they have it all figured out and that none of this is going to be a problem. But they're gambling. They're going up to the craps table and they're gambling. They're making a low odd bet. They're doing the equivalent of something like, hey, I'm betting $100, $1,000. I'm betting. In reality, it's like they're betting millions of people's lives on the odds of like getting a hard 8, which the odds are not very good. That's it for this one. Bye.